Nuclear War Survival Skills, Chapter 8, Continued, Water, page 75. Mounted over the plywood roof to a depth of about 30 inches, with a buried roof of polyethylene. The earth cover and its buried roof were similar to the pit covering illustrated by figure 8.3. This rectangular pit contained about 200 gallons of water. No water leaked out after the pit had been subjected to blast effects severe enough to have flattened most substantial buildings. However, rectangular pits at higher overpressures failed due to sidewall caving that caused leaks. In a subsequent blast test by Boeing Aerospace Company, a plastic-lined water pit was undamaged at the 200 psi overpressure range. First, a rectangular pit 4 feet wide, 12 feet long, and 2 feet deep was dug. Then, inside this pit, a 2 by 10 by 2 foot water storage pit was dug and lined with plastic film. After being filled full of water, the storage pit was covered with plywood, on which was shoveled 2 feet of earth. Plastic garbage cans are usually watertight. Most used metal garbage cans are not. If thoroughly cleaned and disinfected with a strong chlorine bleach solution, watertight garbage cans can serve for emergency water storage, as can some waste baskets. If new plastic film is available, it can be used as a lining to waterproof any strong box. To lessen the chances of the plastic being punctured, rough containers first should be lined with fabric. If shelter is to be taken in or near a building, water trapped in hot water heaters and toilet flush tanks or stored in tubes might be available after an attack. Siphoning. Pouring water out of a heavy water storage bag is inconvenient and often results in spillage. Dipping it out can result in contamination. If a tube or piece of flexible garden hose is available, siphoning, see figure 8.6, is the best way. A field-tested method is described below. To prevent the suction end of the tube from being obstructed by contact with the plastic liner of the bag, tape or tie a wire protector to the end, as pictured later in this section. To start siphoning, suck on the tube until water reaches your mouth. Next, fold over the tube near its end to keep the tube full. Lower its closed end until it is near its position shown in figure 8.6. Then release your hold on the tube to start siphoning. To cut off the water, fold over the tube and secure it shut with a rubber band or string. Water can be siphoned from a covered water storage pit into a below ground shelter so that the siphon will deliver running water for weeks. If necessary, the Utah family mentioned earlier siphoned all they needed of the 120 gallons of water stored in a nearby lined pit. A field-tested method of siphoning follows. Figure 8.6. Using a tube to siphon water from a fabric bag lined with a larger plastic bag. It shows a wall to the right. It shows the floor on the bottom. It shows a bag, and on one end of the bag is the hose, which is at the bottom of the water bag. And the hose comes out over and below the entire bag, which is held up by a support piece of wood. And it's pouring water into a pan, it looks like, at the other end of the siphon tube on the floor. Using a tube to siphon water from a fabric bag lined with a larger plastic bag. Number 1, dig the water storage pit far enough away from the shelter so that the covering mounds will not interfere with drainage ditches. Number 2, use a flexible tube or hose which is no more than 25 feet long. For a single family, a flexible rubber tube with an inside diameter of 1/4 inch, such as surgical tubing, would be best. A flexible 1/2 inch hose of the type used with mobile homes and boats serves well, as indicated by figure 8.7. The tube should be long enough to extend from the bottom of the water pit to within about a foot of the shelter floor. Number 3, make sure that the end in the water pit will not press against plastic and block the flow of water. This can be avoided by 1, making and attaching a wire protector to the end of the tube, as shown in figure 8.8, or 2, taping or tying the end to a rock or other object to keep the end in the desired position. Number 4, protect the tube by placing it in a trench about 4 inches deep. This small trench is best dug before roofing either the storage pit or the shelter. Be sure a roof pole or board does not crush the tube. Cover the tube with earth and tie it so that the end in page 76. The storage pit cannot be accidentally pulled out of the position. Figure 8.8 shows two wire protectors, each made of two pieces of coat hanger, wire taped to a 1/2-inch flexible hose and a rubber tube. Shown on the right is a tube closed with a rubber band to stop a siphoned flow of water. It's in black and white, so it's kind of hard to tell, but I think what it's supposed to be for is to make sure that the hose doesn't kind of clog up or like get stuck to something flat, and make sure that water is continuously entering. I think that's what the design is for. Figure 8.7. Water siphoned into a below ground shelter. It shows the below ground like trench. It shows the pan on the bottom of the dugout trench. Above it is the tube or hose. It shows the tube or hose in earth trench 4 inches deep. So it's not on the surface, it's just below the surface, only 4 inches below it. It goes, and then it goes. Oh, look at that. 2.5. It says 2.5 feet maximum. So this side is deeper than this side that has the water, okay? That's the takeaway. So if this one where the water is being stored is 2.5 feet, then this one has to be like at least 3.5 to 4 feet deep where the water is going to be coming out of. On the top is the buried roofs of plastic film. On top of the little trench, it says plastic or cloth over roof poles, boards, or plywood. On this side, it shows the water storage pit lined with plastic film. It's about 2.5 feet in width and 2.5 feet in depth. The water storage pit lined with plastic film. And the water pit and the side where the water is being siphoned into, it says it's about 8 to 10 feet apart. Just make sure where the water's coming out of is higher than the part where it's coming down into, is the takeaway. Number 5, to start the flow of water into the shelter, hold the free end of the tube at about the height of the surface of the water in the storage pit while pulling gently on the tube so that the part in the shelter is practically straight. Exhale as much breath as you can. Then place the end of the tube in your mouth and suck hard and long. The longer the tube or hose and the larger its diameter, the more times you will have to suck to start the flow of water. Number 6, without taking the tube out of your mouth, shut it off airtight by bending it double near the end. Number 7, exhale. Straighten the tube and suck again, repeating until you feel a good flow of water into your mouth while sucking. Shut off the flow by bending the tube double before taking it out of your mouth. Number 8, quickly lower the end of the tube, which is now full of water, and place the closed end in a container on the shelter floor. Finally, open the end to start the siphoned flow. Number 9, when you have siphoned enough water, stop the flow by bending the tube double. Keep it closed in the double over airtight position with a strong rubber band or string as shown in figure 8.8. To prevent loss of water by accidental siphoning, suspend the end of the tube a couple of inches higher than the surface of the water in the storage pit outside and close to where the tube comes into the shelter. Despite precautions, air may accumulate in the highest part of the tube, blocking a siphon flow and making it necessary to restart the siphoning by repeating the sucking. Disinfecting water. Waterborne diseases probably would kill more survivors of a nuclear attack than would fallout contaminated water. Before an attack, if water from a municipal source is stored in expedient containers that could be unclean, it should be disinfected. For long storage, it is best to disinfect all water, since even a few organisms may multiply rapidly and give stored water a bad taste or odor. Properly disinfected water remains safe for many years if stored in thick plastic or glass containers sealed airtight. For multi-year storage, do not use thin plastic containers such as milk jugs, which in time often develop leaks. Any household bleach solution, such as Clorox, that contains sodium hypochlorite as its only active page 77 ingredient may be used as a source of chlorine for disinfecting. The amount of sodium hypochlorite, usually 5.25%, is printed on the label. In recent years, perhaps as a precaution against drinking undiluted chlorine bleach solution, some household bleach containers show a warning such as "not for personal use." This warning can be safely disregarded if the label states that the bleach contains only sodium hypochlorite as its active ingredient, and if only the small quantities specified in these and other instructions are used to disinfect water, add 1 scant teaspoonful to each 10 gallons of clear water and stir. Add 2 scant teaspoonfuls if the water is muddy or colored. Wait at least 30 minutes before drinking to allow enough time for the chlorine to kill all the microorganisms. Properly disinfected water should have a slight chlorine odor. To disinfect small quantities of water, put 2 drops of household bleach containing 5.25% sodium hypochlorite in each quart of clear water. Use 4 drops if the water is muddy or colored. If a dropper is not available, use a spoon and a square-ended strip of paper or thin cloth about 1/4 inch wide by 2 inches long. Put the strip in the spoon with an end hanging down about 1/2 inch beyond the end of the spoon. Then, when bleach is placed in the spoon and the spoon is carefully tipped, drops the size of those from a medicine dropper will drip off the end of the strip. As a second choice, 2% tincture of iodine can be used. Add 5 drops to each quart of clear water and let stand 30 minutes. If the water is cloudy, add 10 drops to each quart. Commercial water purification tablets should be used as directed. If neither safe water nor chemicals for disinfecting it are available during a crisis, Store plenty of the best water at hand. Even muddy river water, most mud settles to the bottom in a few days. Even in a crowded shelter, ways often could be found to boil water. Bringing water to a boil for 1 minute kills all types of disease-causing bacteria. Boiling for 10 to 20 minutes is required to kill some rarer infective organisms. Sources of water in fallout areas. Survivors of a nuclear attack should realize that neither fallout particles nor dissolved radioactive elements or compounds can be removed from water by chemical disinfection or boiling. Therefore, water should be obtained from the least radioactive sources available. Before a supply of stored drinking water has been exhausted, other sources should be located. The main water sources are given below, with the safest source listed first, and the other sources listed in decreasing order of safety. Number 1, water from deep wells and from water tanks and covered reservoirs into which no fallout particles or fallout contaminated water has been introduced. Caution: although most spring water would be safe, some spring water is surface water that has flowed into and through underground channels without having been filtered. Number 2, water from covered seepage pits or shallow hand-dug wells. This water is usually safe if fallout or fallout contaminated surface water has been prevented from entering by the use of waterproof coverings and by waterproofing the surrounding ground to keep water from running down outside the well casing. Figure 8.9 is taken from a Chinese civil defense manual. It shows a well dug to obtain safe water from a fallout contaminated source. If the earth is not sandy, gravelly, or too porous, filtration through earth is very effective. Number 3, contaminated water from deep lakes. Water from a deep lake would be much less contaminated by dissolved radioactive material and fallout particles than water from a shallow pond would be. If both had the same amount of fallout per square foot of surface area deposited in them. Furthermore, fallout particles settle to the bottom more rapidly in deep lakes than in shallow ponds, which are agitated more by wind. Number 4, contaminated water from shallow ponds and other shallow still water. Number 5, contaminated water from streams, which would be especially dangerous if the stream is muddy from the very first heavy rains after fallout is deposited. Figure 8.9, a water filtering well. This Chinese drawing specifies that this well should be dug 5 to 10 meters, which means roughly 5 to 10 yards, from a pond or stream. It shows there's like a little lake to the left, and then about 5 to 10 feet away is the well